How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, and welcome to your 2020 year ahead horoscope for Pisces, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. In this video, we're going to be going over all of the major transits of 2020 by each quarter and how they'll be affecting you. And now, while there is a lot of astrology happening next year, we're going to be briefly going over the major events so you guys have a general idea of what's going to be going on for you guys this year. Now, if you would like a more in-depth and specific analysis of what's going to be happening for you for 2020, please be sure to check out my website where you guys can purchase a year ahead reading from me, where I'm going to be going over all of the specific transits and the big major events that are going to be affecting you specifically for your chart for 2020. And if you like this year ahead horoscope and you also like weekly horoscopes and monthly horoscopes, please be sure to check out my page and subscribe for all of the latest astrology info and updates. And also follow me on Twitter if you guys like to talk about astrology, engage with me as well as a bunch of other astrologers. If you're not on astrology Twitter, get on there already. And if you'd like to support me and my work and get access to exclusive content and knowledge about astrology, be sure to check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/whitelightastrology. And now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the horoscope. So before we actually go into 2020, we're ending 2019 off with Jupiter entering Capricorn. Now, of course, Jupiter is the planet of good luck and fortune, and whatever he touches, it expands. He's very philosophic, very spiritual, very questionable in the sense of, questioning things on a deeper level. The only thing with Jupiter moving to Capricorn is Jupiter is now moving into its sign of fall, which means Jupiter doesn't have the resources available that it usually does to get the job done. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but what this means is that you kind of have to make do with what you have, and you have to make the best situation out of a shitty situation, if that makes sense. But as Jupiter moves into Capricorn, it's going to be moving into your 11th house of friendship. The 11th house rules friends, groups of people, whether you're in some type of club or community. As long as it's a bigger group of people, that's what it's about. And as Jupiter moves into your 11th house, this is bringing a lot of awareness and expansion to the area of friendship. So while Jupiter goes through Capricorn, this is going to be a good time to really look at what friendships that you have and how you can use them, and which ones do you need to kind of use to get you or to help you with whatever you're going through. But then we actually start 2020 off with the big Saturn-Pluto conjunction that's happening. Now, I don't have enough time today to go over all of the specifics with you on that. I would definitely recommend looking into the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn on your own. But a good way to look at it is, with Pluto being in Capricorn, it's kind of like a big fire, a big wildfire. And Saturn is about containing this fire, taking out all of the trash and putting it in one trash can. And so while there might have been a mess and quite a lot of stuff going on for you guys with friendships and organizations and people you associate yourself with, this is the time to take responsibility and be obligated to handle the mess that you either might have created or that might have got thrown onto you. Then, of course, afterwards, we have the first Mercury retrograde of the year, the first of 3 Mercury retrogrades, and this one is going to be happening in Pisces, your guys' sign. And as Mercury Mercury retrogrades are, of course, all about, rethinking, revisiting, replanning. And Mercury in Pisces is kind of hard because Mercury's in detriment in Pisces, so this may be a little bit more confusing and a little bit more frustrating than normal to kind of rethink and replan and re-strategize. But it is in your first house, so this Mercury retrograde is going to be all about you and what you're reflecting on and where you can sometimes miscommunicate and what changes or what realizations you need to be aware of about yourself. Then as we get into March, that is when we're going to have Saturn enter Aquarius. Now, this is a pretty big deal. Saturn will come back into Capricorn later on this year, but as Saturn moves from Capricorn into Aquarius, Saturn, the planet of lessons, the planet of discipline, of hardship, of walls and barriers, consolidation, but maturity and authority and learning some good lessons, as it moves into Aquarius, this is about 2 things, and that's either connecting or disconnecting. Now, the big thing is that Saturn's entering your 12th house of repressed and unacknowledged parts of yourself, things that you might not have seen before that may cause issues down the road. And as Saturn goes into Aquarius, you're going to start feeling blockages and maybe some walls coming up from inside of you that you might not have been aware of. It's about, the 12th house has a lot to do with the subconscious, so you might have some subconscious beliefs going on inside of you that might be holding you back from doing everything that you need to do or want to do, and it's time to start reflecting on those things. But we end the first quarter of 2020 with Jupiter conjoining Pluto. Now, this is a pretty big deal in a sense because it's kind of weird. Jupiter being so philosophical and so optimistic in Capricorn already is having a hard time, but as it conjoins Pluto, this is changing a lot. And this is kind of realizing that the tools that you have to do this big job are not big enough, but you're gonna have to use it anyway because you're gonna get the most out of this situation with it. And we're gonna talk about that later in this video. However, with Jupiter conjoining Pluto, this is kind of realizing the big changes you need to make, but also if you have the belief and you have the faith that you can conquer it, that you can do it, you will. And this is regarding 11th house stuff of friendships or even career if your midheaven's there, but people that you associate with. But as we start the second quarter of 2020 is when we're going to have the nodes, which are the points on a birth chart that represent where the eclipses are, move into Gemini and Sagittarius right when eclipse season begins in 2020. So the big thing is the North Node is moving into Gemini, and the North Node, of course, is the direction that we're wanting to go in towards, where we're heading. It's Rahu, the dragon's head, what we're hungry for, what we're consuming. And as that goes into Gemini, there's going to be a big focus on information. Information being what we're being told, what information we have available now, what is factual, what's black and white. And the South Node is moving into Sagittarius. The South Node being our past, where we came from, where we've been, what we're kind of wanting to wrap up and leave. That's going to be in Sagittarius, which is all about our belief, which is all about, like targets. It's about visualization. It's about ideas and dreams and hopes. And as the South Node moves from there, we're moving away from this idea of what can be into what is. But the big thing for you guys is that this is going to be hitting your 10th and your 4th houses. So these are pretty big deals. As the North Node moves into Gemini, it's moving into your 4th house. So you're going to be bringing more focus on to your family life, your home life, your private life, where you're living, and your parents. And the South Node being in Sagittarius in your 10th house is going to be kind of letting go of career stuff. And that doesn't mean letting go of career like retiring early or something like that. It just means not putting the focus there too much, but having to close out some chapters in some books with career things. But then right after eclipse season is when we're going to have Venus station retrograde in Gemini. Now, Venus, of course, is the planet of love and value and romance, and she wants you to indulge and connect into the things that you love and enjoy the most. And as she goes through your 4th house in Gemini, she's kind of wanting to have more stimulation with family members, or maybe with your roommates, or maybe be more enthralled with the experience, with your living experience. But as Venus retrogrades, this is a value shift, and this is where you're not going to be getting as much stimulation as you used to in this area, and you're going to be seeking newer stuff out. So that might be switching stuff up with your family and trying to have more fun, or maybe moving somewhere different that's more enjoyable for you. But the big thing is about realizing that what you want isn't no longer getting, scratching the itch, and you're going to be finding something else to replace that. But then we have the second Mercury retrograde of this year, so not too much is happening in between those two times. However, this Mercury retrograde is now in Cancer. So, of course, Mercury retrogrades are about revisiting, rethinking, replanning, and all of that stuff. But this time it's in the sign of Cancer, where we're talking about nurturing, we're talking about our needs, we're talking about trusting, we're talking about what needs to be protected. And this Mercury retrograde is happening in your 5th house. The 5th house is all about love and romance. It's all about what you want. It's all about what you can create, what makes you unique. It's about sex. It's about children. It's about art and creativity. And so as Mercury retrogrades through this area, you're going to start reflecting more on where your needs need to be met when it comes to the things that you enjoy and your hobbies and your pursuits. But then as we start the third quarter of 2020 is when we're going to have Saturn retrogress back into Capricorn, where all those problems that you might have been having coming from your subconscious and from hidden areas kind of stops for a second, and you got to go back and readdress any type of situation that you might have had with your friends or community members. But with Saturn going back into Capricorn, you kind of have to go back and readdress anything that you didn't address while Saturn was in Capricorn for the past 2.5 years. But then right after that is when we're going to be having Mars enter shadow. Now at this time, Mars is in Aries, it's energized, it's hyped up. Mars is a malefic, so it does heat things up and it severs and it cuts. But while it's in Aries, it's very charged up. The problem is while Mars enters shadow, it starts to slow down. And while Mars is usually energized in Aries, when it starts slowing down, you're going to start slowing down. And whatever you're trying to accomplish and focus on during this time, you're going to have to go back over and handle and readdress. And we'll be talking a lot about this as we continue to move on. And then, of course, right after that, Venus is going to station direct and move out of its shadow, where you can actually start to tread new territory with what Venus and Gemini's retrograde, what brought to you, whether that was some new mental stimulation or new value stimulation with your family and your home life, or sprucing your place up a little bit. You finally get to start moving forward and enjoying those things again. But then right after that, from about August 4th till about August 27th is when we're going to be having Mars square Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. And we have to remember, Mars is in your second house right now, of money, of finances, of what you own. And Mars heats things up. Mars dries things out. So you might have some issues with money during this time of where it's going and where you're spending it. But the problem is Mars is squaring Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. This is where all of those planets are in your friendship houses. So are your friends or your communities or things that you're involved with getting in the way of you earning more money? And is it draining your money? But then right after that, on September 9th, is when Mars actually stations retrograde and begins to move backwards. And this is when you get to start addressing those problems and where your energy was slowing down. And this may look like handling what exactly it is that you do value, and maybe switching up who you surround yourself with, or how much time you spend with those people and how much money you spend with those people, so you can actually start saving some more money. And then, of course, right after that, once we get into November, is when we're going to have Jupiter come back and conjoin Pluto. And like I said in the beginning of this video, Jupiter in Capricorn is about utilizing what we have in the best way possible. And if you've remained consistent, if you've had that belief and that faith in yourself, as Jupiter conjoins Pluto, this is going to be quite a big change in what you believe and what you think is possible and capable, or what you think can be real. And this is happening in your 11th house. This looks like a big change in friendships, a big change in who you hang out with, or how you're looked at with the people that you hang out with. And this isn't a bad change, this is a good change, but it might look a lot different than you expect it to. And what's nice about this big change that happens once Jupiter conjoins Pluto is the next day, Mars actually stations direct. So where all the problems that you were facing and challenges that you might have had hanging out with friends or spending too much money with them, as Mars starts to move forward, as Mars moves forward again, you can actually start focusing on what you're trying to do with your money, actually get a grip with it, and still be able to hang out with your friends. The only problem is Mars is still going to be squaring Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto through this whole time. So the challenge isn't over yet. The tides just start to turn. But then right after that, as we get into the end of November and the beginning of December, is when we have the second set of eclipses of the year. This time with the focus on Sagittarius. And with the South Node being in Sagittarius in your 10th house of career, this is going to be more focusing on what do you need to close up, what do you need to kind of have some closure with, and wrap up with your career stuff, with 10th house activities, so you can start to move more towards focusing on where you center yourself, where you're living in your private life. And this is just a big wrap up time. Because right after that, we get into the big grand finale and the big show of 2020, which is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. At this time, both Jupiter and Saturn will be moving into Aquarius, and then they will be conjoining each other. And this is happening in your 12th house. And as Jupiter moves out of the stuffy sign of Capricorn and gets some fresh air in Aquarius, this is where Jupiter, the planet of faith and, blowing things up in a good way and fortune and stuff like that, it's going to go into your 12th house of isolation, of repressed and unacknowledged parts of yourself. So this is going to be a good time for you to reflect on who you are. What do you believe? What makes you you? What do you want more of that, or what do you believe that you might have suppressed and that you may not have acknowledged, which isn't a bad thing. That's fun. But as Jupiter goes into your 12th house, which for you guys more specifically sounds like a fun time, you also have Saturn there. You're going to have more responsibilities, and you're going to start seeing more walls and barriers in this area. So it's going to be up to you to really balance out where you're placing your beliefs and where you're placing your limitations. And that's basically how we end 2020 and jump into 2021. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. If you want a more specific and detailed analysis of what 2020 is supposed to look like for you this year, please book a reading with me. I'd love to go over what exactly 2020 has in store for you guys. And so with that being said, thank you guys so much, and I'll be seeing you next time.